Висят переводчики.
Да.
Переводчики не наши.
And the microphone on stage.
They're working.
Мясо технический бонус. Check, yeah, 1, 2.
1, 2, 3. It's all.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Почему делают координаторы? Здравствуйте, вы здесь ответите. Зайти со звуком. Включите, пожалуйста, звук. Там файл начался.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to this panel today in Kazan as part of the World Skills Conference 2019, the future of work through the prism of youth. Do apologise a little bit for the slight delay. Apparently the coffee queues are quite long outside, so thank you for waiting around. And thank you as well for your interest in young people. Clearly this is an issue that matters. It matters now, it matters in the future as part of the future of work discussions. But yes, thank you for coming along today, and without further ado, we'll get on with our panel. To introduce myself, my name's Shane McLaughlin. I work in Paris at the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, and in particular I work on a number of campaigns at the OECD. So a campaign called I'm the Future of Work, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a few moments, but also another campaign called Going Digital, which looks at really the speed of digitalisation and the way that technology is changing societies and the economy, and as a result our lives, and the way that policy needs to catch up at a local level as well as at a national and, for that matter, international level. So voila, I come from the OECD. I'm going to be moderating today. But I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel, as we have some young people, we have some older people. I'm not looking at anyone, of course, in that category, Nick. But yes, we're indeed honoured to have our great panel today. So I might start with Laurence, who works, or is a member rather of the board of World Skills. She's had a career working in vocational education and training. Laurence, just 2 or 3 words about yourself as an introduction.
Yes, I have a long experience of World Skills. I've calculated this about 14 years of my life. So I've been involved with skills competitions mostly, and also at some point have been working for the Education and Training Foundation in the UK, preparing professional development programs for teachers and trainers in vocational education. So very happy to be here in Kazan, and I'd like to use the opportunity to congratulate our hosts on organising a really great event.
Absolutely. And our next panellist is Nick Chambers from the UK, who works for an organisation called Education and Employers, which is really all about connecting volunteers in the world of work to young people. Nick, did you want to add a couple of words to that?
Yeah, I'm the chief exec of a charity set up 10 years ago to connect young people. We do research, working closely with World Skills and the OECD to really help young people understand the world of work. And we also run programs that connect the world of work around the world with young people. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Nick. And next on our panel is Jacqueline Tanzer, who is actually a World Skills champion and part of the Trust. She's an accomplished graphic designer and has recently set up her own company. So Jacqueline, a couple of words as well.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to introduce myself now. So my name is Jacqueline, and I competed in 2015 in graphic design technology, and I'm now part of the World Skills Champions Trust, and founded my own business 2 years ago, and I'm really happy to have a youth voice in this panel today.
Fantastic. And Neil Bentley, also from the UK, works as CEO of World Skills in the UK and brings with him today a wealth of experience, particularly regarding inequalities in the workplace, and really is an advocate in fighting for a fairer world of work. So Neil, would you like to say a couple of words?
Thank you. On top of that, happy to be here today as the CEO of World Skills UK, alongside having a team competing next door over the next few days. I'm really pleased that the UK has been able to support this work as one of the case study members, but also one of the members alongside, I think, Russia, France, Japan, USA, Canada, who've also supported this. I've been involved in World Skills for a mere 4 years, compared with lots of other people who've been doing this for a long time. Very happy to be engaged. Prior to being in World Skills, I was the deputy head of the UK's business lobby, the Confederation of British Industry. So as well as being passionate about giving young people a voice in skills development, also understand the economic development needs behind that as well. So great to be here, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Neil. And our last panellist, but certainly not least, from a great country called Ireland, no doubt heard of that one, is Gary Condon. And Gary Condon is described as a master plasterer. So he's also a World Skills champion and he's part of the trust, working currently in the Gulf area. But Gary, would you like to add something further to that?
So once again, it'll be heard. So yeah, my name is Gary Condon. I competed in London 2011. I won a gold medal in plastering and drywall systems. I now live in the UAE. I work for Saint-Gobain, who are one of the global partners of World Skills. And I represent the MENA region on the World Skills Champions Trust. So this is my 4th year on the Champions Trust. And
fantastic. Thanks, Gary, and thanks to all our panellists for that introduction. So today we're going to be talking about the future of work. We're going to be talking in particular about young people and what they think about the future of work. I'm going to hand over very shortly to Laurence, who's going to explain how the study came about, how the coalition between the 3 organisations involved came about as well. But yes, I think Laurence might add a few words.
Yes, so how did we actually have this idea? Well, if you haven't done so, I would really encourage you to take a walk through the halls out there and just have a look at the competition. You will realize that World Skills is about young people. It is about us helping them along their journey in skills. So we thought actually we have access to young people, and as we were preparing the conference, we thought, well, there's this lot of talk about future of work, the fact that some skills are going to disappear, are going to change, and we were actually wondering what young people think about that, because they're going to have to go through all this change. So were they scared? Were they excited? What did they think of all those upcoming changes? And when we looked around, we realized that there wasn't really anything available. It looked like nobody had really asked the young people how they felt about this. And so we thought, hey, that's something that we could do, because we could, if nothing else, ask our competitors. Now, it happened that we were also working with the OECD at the time on the conference program, and they mentioned the future of work. We mentioned our idea, and somehow we just end up sitting around the table and thinking, hey, this is a really great idea, we could do that. So we got going, and then Nick and his organization came on board to help us analyze the data and ensure that whatever findings we were going to present today would actually hold water. That we really looked at it, were we absolutely sure? And that's where Nick and his organization came in, and you have the final result available today, and that's what we're going to discuss.
Yeah. So there's a few kind of numbers, a few metrics about what the study was comprised of, so you can see there, and many of you have actually a highlights document that Bart is kindly handing out. They're still being printed, so we're doing our best to get those to you. But essentially, yes, a survey carried out by a UK company called OnePoll. We went into 19 G20 countries. They're listed there. We got a very good kind of sample size, around 15,000 respondents in all, aged from 18 to 24, coming from general education, but as well vet programs. And so we have a good representative and some great comparable data regarding social economic backgrounds, obviously regarding gender, regarding kind of types of education, whether you're paying fees or not paying fees in your schools. So it's a very rich database. We've produced this initial report. We'll talk about it as we go through the session. But indeed, we're really confident that we've got something that addresses those different aspects of what young people think about the future of work. And I guess the narrative that's really come out of this report is one around awareness. It's one about confidence, and it's one about readiness, ultimately, to deal with the changes in the world of work. So what we're going to do is get you involved, and thank you again, audience, for coming along. I'm just going to set the scene, just to introduce some OECD numbers, some data points from our work, just to say that, the future of work, the world of work is changing. The labour market is transforming. We're seeing less jobs in manufacturing since 1995 and more jobs in services. So we're seeing that kind of transformation in the labour market. We're seeing automation having an effect. Obviously, there's a lot of numbers around the level to which automation is having an effect. The OECD says 14% of jobs are at high risk, and another 32% of jobs are likely to change because of technology in the workplace. So really around half of the jobs will be affected. The OECD doesn't say that jobs are going to be lost massively. We say that tasks are really changing in terms of one's job. We're also saying that technology isn't always a bad thing. Technology can help us. It can help create other types of jobs. It can also help those that have kind of dirty and difficult and boring jobs to have less dirty, less difficult, less boring jobs. So technology can be seen and should be seen in balance, as it were, with the risk of automation. We can also see that there's a growing incidence of non-standard work. We can see that now across the OECD, 1 in 7 workers is self-employed, and 1 in 9 employees on a temporary contract. So obviously that brings about implications for social protection. Are these self-employed or non-standard workers paying into, for example, pension funds or paying into sickness benefits, or are they covered, in other words, if something goes wrong or when they get to the end of their careers? And one of the other ones is regarding G20 countries self-employment, and as I said, 37% that are self-employed are not receiving those types of benefits. And then the last one is really about skills. So we're here today to discuss skills as part of the World Skills Conference, logically. But we can see here that we found that 6 out of 10 adults are lacking basic ICT skills. And the share of highly skilled jobs has increased by 25%. But that's creating a polarisation, if you like, in the job market, in the labour market, where we see that middle-skilled jobs, or at least the share of middle-skilled jobs, is decreasing. And of course today we really wanted to discuss the idea of low-skilled and how to equip and enable those with low skills in this changing world of work. Voila. And talking about low skills, we're seeing that disadvantaged adults in the workplace are not receiving enough training. So really the systems, as they function at the moment, are favouring those with kind of medium to high range of skill levels, age, income, and so on. So I just wanted to set the scene in terms of a few numbers from the OECD. There's some more information up the back as well as downstairs. There's some flyers and stuff that kind of summarises that if you're more interested in digging into that a bit deeper. So voila, today we're going to discuss how aware young people are about technological change, the confidence that they have in terms of this changing world of work, and how ready they feel and how well they've been supported through their educational and other systems and institutions during that kind of initial education leading into preparation to enter the world of work. So what I'm going to do now is actually get you involved, and I just wanted to present 9 different numbers, key figures that came out of the study done with World Skills and Education Employers. So we can see there that this is quite a positive one, that young people are generally aware of things like artificial intelligence, renewable energies, what that means in terms of climate change and benefiting the environment, advanced robotics, which I'm sure you'll see a number of on display today. Certainly at the opening ceremony, if you were there last night, advanced robotics were definitely on display, and that was quite impressive, as well as augmented reality and big data. But what I wanted to do is just to ask the audience about what you perceive young people thinking and feeling, their attitudes about the possibility of work or to work flexibly as a positive development, as something exciting. So I'm just going to put up some options here and ask you who agrees with that young people, that 20% of young people would see the opportunity to work flexibly as an exciting prospect. Just as a show of hands, who thinks it's around 20%? Okay, absolutely no one. Anyone thinks it's over 60% of young people thinking about this as a positive development? Okay, so probably about a third to a half of the room. And who thinks it's between 80 and 90%? And probably another third there. So most people agreed with B, And you're actually correct. So 63% said they're excited about the prospect of being able to work flexibly. So that's one of the key findings of the report. Another one is really about how confident young people feel that they'll get the job they want. And you can see that this is quite positive. 61% of young people felt confident they'd get the job they want, 12% feeling less confident. Another question, which percentage of young women believe they have what it takes to retrain during their careers because of technological change? So let's do the same thing. Who believes that under 20% of women feel that they believe they have what it takes to retrain during their careers? Just as a show of hands, under 20%. Okay, around 60% of women feeling confident. Okay, and then between 80 and 90. Great, so most people again thinking around 60%. All right, the answer is around 60%, so well done again if you got that correct. Don't hesitate to participate. And then in terms of young men, same thing. So in fact, I won't ask for a show of hands again, but we found that around 60% of young women believe they have what it takes for retraining, and 60% of men. So there's not a great amount of difference there, but it's still quite positive, isn't it? So the narrative so far is really one of hope, you know, treating flexible work as a good thing, thinking about my ability to retrain, that's good. I feel confident that I have what it takes to retrain. So, next question. Which percentage of young people fear that they won't have access to permanent full-time jobs because of digitalisation? So, under 20%, show of hands. Young people fear they won't have access to permanent full-time jobs because of digitalisation. 50% of young people, show of hands, so a few more, between 80 and 90% fear that they won't have access to those, what we'd call traditional jobs, I guess. So in fact, it's around 50% again. So less than half of young people fear that they don't have or won't be able to secure these traditional types of jobs. You know, not to say that working on the gig economy or as part of non-standard work is not an option. It's just those traditional jobs. So regarding skills or the demand for skills and knowledge in the future, young people had a lot to say there. Again, 45% felt, which is quite high in fact, they felt that there won't be much demand for their skills and knowledge further down the line as they develop their careers. And only 27% felt that their skills and knowledge will be in demand. So that, you know, the narrative turns a little bit more negative now. We see that there is a certain fear regarding confidence levels, as it were, skills in the future. And this is a big one. Extra help at school, yes please. I know what job I want to be doing in 10 years' time, and I don't know what job I'd like to be doing in 10 years' time. So a lot of people said that they know what they want to do, that they were using the internet to inform their thinking, speaking to career counsellors and meeting people in the job they're interested in. So people are looking positive in that way. However, and I say however, let's have as the last question, a show of hands. Who believes that young people would have liked more help, more support while they were at school to get jobs? So under 30% of young people would have welcomed more help. Who believes that that's the case? Okay, around 50% young people, okay, and between 70 and 80% feeling. So, okay, and you've done well. The majority has got it again. 71% of young people would have welcomed more help in getting a job while they're at school. Only 8% of the 19 different countries that the study went into felt that school was doing them a service, that it was supporting them sufficiently. So a lot of people said they would have welcomed more help on how to get a job. Practical things like applications, CVs, interview skills while they were in secondary school. And the last one also relates to technical change, these changes in the world of work. 62% rather of young people wanted more help regarding information and knowledge about the way that technology is going to change the world of work. So they said that they're aware of technologies. They said that they're lacking confidence in terms of the demand for their skills and knowledge in the future, but really expressed a negativity as regards the support and the readiness for the future of work, for the world of work, in terms of what their school system was supporting them and providing them with in education. So that's a quick rundown, and you can see those, as we said before, in the handout. So Bart, I'm not sure if there's any more. There's still a few takers, so a raise of hands if you'd like to receive a copy. And this whole report has been done in the context of the I'm the Future of Work campaign at the OECD. I'm just going to talk about that for 1 minute before we pass over to panellists. And there are volunteers as well, because we have campaign photo albums at the back of the room. So I might ask in a moment for those who would like a photo album. There are volunteers, if you wouldn't mind just grabbing those photo albums and passing them around. We've been running a campaign at the OECD for around 6 months now, and the idea of the campaign was really to take the debate about the future of work from a largely technological debate and bring it to what that means for people, what the implications are for workers and for future workers. So one of the elements of that particular campaign was to send photojournalists around the world, and the evidence of their efforts is in the photo albums that you're receiving. So please do raise a hand if you'd like a photo album, and people are coming around to hand those out. Thank you very much. So we've also been into local high schools around the Paris area, disadvantaged high schools in Clichy-sous-Bois, and run projects with them regarding attitudes and the future of work. We've obviously done this significant study with World Skills and Education and Employers, and we've also got contributions from workers and future workers through our website, really regarding their attitudes and perceptions of the future of work. So we've learnt a number of things from that. We've learnt, and to be honest, it's quite similar to the narrative that came out of the study that we did. That's to say, people seem to be aware that there are changes taking place. There's a certain level of confidence, but also there's this feeling that I'm not ready. I'm not ready as a future worker. I'm not ready as a worker in their context at this point. And in fact, there's this certain element of we need to catch up. We're playing catch up. It seems as if technology is taking the future of work ahead at a steady rate of knots. And those things like education systems, like employment policies and labour policies, those things like vet programs and apprenticeship programs are not yet in the game. So they're kind of playing catch up, as it were, to the fast rate of change that's taking place in the world of work. So I've spoken a lot. I'm conscious of that. I apologise if that was a bit too much, but I really just wanted to set the scene and to give you a quick readout of what we found in terms of asking young people about the future of work. But I'd like to, yes?
Is it possible to ask a question?
Please do. Please interrupt any of us at any time to ask a question. Yes?
I think the figures are the average across G19.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you have discovered that there are big differences probably between regions, and is there a strong link between the economic situation in the area?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to dig down into that during our discussion, but I mean, there have been some noticeable comparisons between countries. In fact, regarding confidence, if you look at the highlights report that I hope you're receiving gradually, we can see that in confidence in South Korea and in Japan and some other kind of G7 or other G7 countries, that there's a low level of confidence regarding the future of work, the skills that I have, the knowledge that there will be a certain demand for my skills and knowledge. Yet in other countries, and we've noticed that in BRIC countries, for example, in some of the emerging economies, that there's a high level of confidence. So, as you say, there are some very nice comparable data regarding gender, regarding countries, regarding background in terms of education, regarding socioeconomic background, and so on. So yes, we've we'll definitely talk about that in a bit. But I just wanted to turn to the panel one by one to get your cold reaction, really to ask whether this rings true for you in your local context. Some of you are working in, well, all of you are working in different kind of areas with different expertise. But, does this ring true, and was there anything particularly surprising in those high-level findings that were presented? So, Laurence.
Yeah, I was actually a bit surprised because when you read the media, it always sounds like people are youngsters are exam obsessed, they're really worried, they don't quite know what's going to happen. So I was really surprised about the positivity that came out when we asked the questions, and the fact that our young people actually are ready for the change, which is a difference from when I was growing up, when you expected things to be like for your parents. Change for me was kind of a big issue. So I was quite pleased to see that for the younger generation at the moment, they're not scared of the challenge, so to speak. They're more worried about how they're going to manage that challenge. So that was a surprise for me, I would say, and a really positive one. And I must say, a bit surprised to me too, because I didn't quite know what to expect, because having worked with World Skills Champions for such a long time, we always end up, whichever country it is, with a team of highly motivated young people, very confident. So I wasn't sure the rest of the world was like that. So that was really, I would say, a positive surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things actually that these types of conferences are criticised for, one of them is gender. You want to avoid the manel, as it's called, but it's also about having a range of ages on panels, and we're so happy today to have Jacqueline and to have Gary. But Jacqueline, does this ring true for you? You're a young person starting a company with his expertise in graphic design. How do these figures seem to you?
Yeah, I really agree with Laurence that I was also really surprised how positive young people are, like I am myself, but I didn't think it was a general opinion. But it's really kind of uplifting to see that.
Yeah. Okay, so again, that certain surprise at the level of optimism, as it were, for young people. And Neil, what about for you? What's your kind of instant reaction to all of that?
I think what it shows is there's quite a lot of work to do as well in terms of policymakers to catch up with the optimism the young people are feeling, because what I worry about is there's not enough of a broader sort of dialogue around the positive impact of technology and how it will change the economy and economic structures, and how we need to really get ahead of that and drive that forward. And governments should be organising themselves, I think, around technology and technological change as an organising principle, to really think about how then other policies fall in behind that, because I worry that if they don't take a lead in public discourse and in public policy, you will see a disconnect between the optimism that young people are expressing in this survey and policy and practice in each country, and to be able to keep up with that. So that could be a looming challenge. But I think what the report also shows is, we all need to be doing work in schools and with young people to make sure that we are upping our game, really, in making everybody aware of the opportunities and challenges, and addressing, as you said at the beginning, some of the gender imbalance, I think, which is coming out of the report as well, in terms of level of confidence, particularly young women who are not feeling as confident as young men about the change.
Yeah, completely. And we're really looking today to dig into these solutions. So Neil's identified, a number of issues regarding policies and the way, maybe at the moment they're not supporting this drive for reform of education systems and skills policies. So we're going to dig into that and really pick the brains of our panellists regarding what they're doing at their local level, and how we might be able to scale that out and kind of make that more impacting, as it were, in terms of solutions. So Gary, does this seem true for you?
Yeah, it does. Also, like when I was in school, I didn't feel like I had the opportunities to try the job that I'm in today. It was never available. And even when I got career advice, I was never given the advice to go down the road of doing an apprenticeship. And it was only from seeing my older brothers and my dad, who are also tradesmen, that is what gave me the passion to want to get involved in it. And it was when I came out of school did I actually, and get into my apprenticeship, did I start to pick up the skills that I hold today.
Sure.
And then also, when I done the competition, I got headhunted by Saint Gobain. When I started working for them, I didn't have the IT skills. So at the age of 22, I started learning how to properly do IT, like emails, Excel reports, all this kind of stuff, because I never knew it before.
Yeah, fascinating. So Gary, for you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how useful was school? Because what you're saying there is kind of like, well, the stuff that I use today in my place of work, my expertise, was more or less not in school.
Yeah, but it's not like, obviously school is, you need it because you build so many soft skills, but it was when I came out of school that I find my passion and what I really, really wanted. Like, I just wish maybe there could be when you're at a younger age, career guidance, people could recognise that, okay, maybe you're not so much interested in this, and we should give you the advice to try different classes and stuff like that, if they're available.
Yeah. And Jacqueline, when you're at school, were people asking you what you wanted to do, or was it just the curriculum, let's stick to that, this is dry, this is how it is?
I would say it was the curriculum, but it was a choice because I went to a vocational school. I didn't do an apprenticeship.
Okay.
But I had to make this choice when I was 14. Yeah. And I could have always done something different afterwards, go to university. That is still an opportunity if you go to a vocational school. So that was always good to know because I knew I was going to learn a skill, a profession, and I was going to finish as fully equipped graphic designer, and I still had all the opportunities. That was good.
Yeah, okay. So where did those opportunities come from though, would you say?
Self-made.
Okay.
But you have to see them, recognize them, and take them, really.
Yeah, okay, for sure. This delves into a deeper question about kind of who is responsible for getting the skills, got skills, question mark. Is it teachers? Is it policymakers, whether at national, local level? Is it students, young people, workers themselves? Is it employers, actually, trying to influence, as it were? Because we know that there's a massive skills mismatch, and I'm going to turn to you, Neil, maybe about that. But we know that the demand in the labour market as it stands is not being supplied sufficiently by the skills that are coming out, whether it's in young people, young workers, education systems. And the tone here and through the narrative coming from the study is that education systems are kind of failing. PISA results, a big OECD study that looks at young 15-year-olds actually at the end of initial education and their kind of competencies, as it were, in literacy and numeracy and in science, have been telling us for nearly 2 decades that schools are failing. And I'm just keen to hear from Neil as to how we might be able to better equip young people for the future, how we can kind of fix this skills mix match, because employers want one thing, education systems are delivering another. So, Neil.
Yeah, that's been a long-standing challenge, I think, and particularly in the UK, where you will see employer surveys over many years saying young people aren't leaving school or colleges with the right skills that they need, and they identify those in many different ways, but they are the sort of soft employability, what we're now starting to call human skills, around creativity, around resilience, real soft skills that employers are saying the education system isn't really delivering, and because they're focusing so much on the sort of academic skills and things that the basic skills that education, the systems believe are the most important things. So I think there's still a bridging to be done there, but some of the work that we've been doing as World Skills UK, picking up the theme of what do young people think, is there's a very strong narrative that over many years employers saying young people aren't ready for work. Well, we've been developing a narrative which is, are employers ready for young people? because the perspective of young people increasingly is very different from the workplaces they're expected to work in. And looking at working with our skills champions in the UK, talking to them about their expectations of work around support for mental health issues, diversity and inclusion, mentoring programs. You know, there's a lot that young people are now expecting as standard work that employers aren't geared up. So I think there are issues around policy as well as delivery, but also a third angle is, again, listening to young people. What do they want and what are they expecting? Because it's very much given as this is the education and then this is the workplace, but nobody's asking young people about how to create an environment in which they will flourish, because that's what the workplace should be about as well. It is a dialogue between management and employees, thinking about how to create the best environment to get the most out of young people.
Fantastic, thank you. I've known Nick Chambers now for about 24 hours, and in that 24 hours he's never spoken less than he has in the last half an hour. So it's my pleasure to ask Nick a couple of questions, because Nick warned me before that he's quite verbose. So Nick, two questions. What can we change in school systems to do a better job in preparing young people? And I mean, you're really at this interface between schools and employers. So how can we help to improve, and we'll come to questions from the audience after that, how can we help to improve that interface, that relationship, and therefore that readiness, as it were, for the labour market?
Good. Well, I'll try and keep it short. For those of you who have the summary document, can I suggest you turn to pages 12 and 13, because there's a key fact for me in this fantastic report, and that is young people's experience of the world of work. Now, we heard earlier this figure of 71% of young people want more experience from the world of work, but the table opposite on page 13 looks at young people and how much experience they've had of the world of work, and you'll see that 48% of young people have said they've had no experience whilst at school of the world of work, no activities. And by activities I mean CV, practice, mock interviews, career speed networking, talks from employers, work experience. So 48% of those young people have had no interaction with the world of work. So how can you understand what the world of work is unless you meet people from it? There's a famous expression, you can't be what you can't see. You know, kids look for their inspiration around them. They see their parents, their friends, but if they don't see people doing the jobs, how can they be inspired? So here we are today. We've got obviously two people with Jacqueline and Gary. Just imagine if those two went in to a school to talk to young people. Behind us, with the whole World Skills, we have, 1,500 people here, young people. Imagine the impact of them going in and talking to young people at school about all the things they do. And our argument, and it's something we're working on in the UK, is to try and ensure that all our young people, from primary school onwards, get the chance to meet people doing a massive variety of jobs, from apprentices to CEOs, from all levels, from archaeologists to zoologists, and that is it's called Inspiring the Future, and we think it's really important for young people, particularly those from challenging backgrounds, and this picks up on here, if you have your own network, if you're well connected, if you go to a wealthy school, you've got amazing connections through your parents, your friends, the alumni of your school. But if you just go to a normal school, you know, how do you understand what the world has to offer? Well, you've got YouTube, you've got video, but there is nothing better than a young person being given a chance to talk to someone from the labour market. Any of you, or particularly on our panel, and Neil's done fantastic work getting in the UK, your people into schools to talk to young people. What could be more inspiring than seeing the people here today going into school and saying, I represented my country at the World Championships, at World Skills, and going and inspiring the next generation. So that's really my point. Thank you.
Very good.
I hope that answers both of your questions. I'm not sure it did, anyway.
More or less, more or less. No, I'm very impressed actually, and what came out quite strongly, if you saw the opening conference yesterday, and what I've seen so far at the World Skills events is this ability really to help create opportunities for people or young people from local contexts. So people from villages and towns, cities, you know, competing at that local level, getting the opportunity to compete then at regional level, national level, international level. We're really seeing, you know, and Neil actually, I don't know if you wanted to tell that story, but flew over, well actually Neil, tell the story, I think it's a good one.
It's not an unusual story from a WorldSkills perspective, but one of our competitors, who's a young woman in the lab tech competition, was just saying to me it's the first time she's left the UK, when she was travelling with us to France, to then get on a plane to France to come here. And it's not an unusual story. I'm sure it's shared across all WorldSkills member countries, where the opportunity to travel within your country, to go to your national finals as well as regional finals, and then to work internationally is a huge experience in itself, and potentially transformative in terms of their experience of just, you know, thinking about things more globally as we're sitting here, but also at a national level. And you shouldn't underestimate that soft impact of the work that we do at WorldSkills with young people in terms of giving them opportunities to think beyond their local environments or where they've been growing up, so they can see the world of opportunity that's out there.
Absolutely. And I did promise that I'd open it up for questions or comments. So is there anyone, there's microphones that are available. So if you please do ask a question or make a comment about what we're talking about so far.
Yeah, now it's working. We've heard that there's a mismatch between schools and the needs of the industry, and lots of us know about the public policies are not going on the direction, on the real direction that we need. Do you think that this positive attitude of the youth, it's because they're naive, or it's because they know that they're for themselves and they're not because of the school system or because of the policies, but in spite of those schools and in spite of those public policies?
It's a fantastic question. I don't want to answer that. I could, but I'd prefer that our panel has a go. So anyone like to answer that? Are young people actually not optimistic, they're rather naive? Is that the, yeah? Jacqueline.
I'd really like to answer that. I don't think they are naive. Like, probably it is a bit of naivety, but that's really important. Like, you need that positive attitude. You need to think, I can adapt. I will be able to keep up with that change, and you will be able to. So I think it's great if it's naive, let's be naive, but I think it's a really smart decision in this case to be naive.
Any other panellists like to jump in there?
I mean, I think behind all of this is giving young people confidence to be themselves, and actually whether you call it naive or it's optimism, it's actually them knowing their own minds about what it is they want to do. And I think that's what comes out in this report, and it's often because of policy frameworks or institutional frameworks sat upon that we should be, really what's behind this initiative from WorldSkills as well, as giving that voice so we can have this debate. Because we do have to, we say it all the time in WorldSkills, where you take young people who may not be the most confident, but by the end of their journey, when they walk out of the closing ceremony, they are transformed and have a better sense of themselves and are more confident in themselves about what they want to achieve in life. And if we can replicate that across populations of young people in all the countries that we're from, then that, I think, will start to change dialogue and shaping policy, because it's about building confidence in young people more broadly, that I think in giving them a platform to talk about the future as they see it, not the future as maybe policymakers and employers see it. So it's bringing that youth voice into that debate is really important.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention an associated point about aspirations. We did a survey of nearly 20,000 primary school children from around the world, and we asked them what they wanted to be when they grow older. It showed the gender stereotyping starting at a young age and being great. What it also showed, one of the biggest surprising, was actually children from very poor backgrounds often have high aspirations. People assume because you're poor, you have low aspirations. That is not true. Those kids at a young age, it was really insightful. All right, a lot about what they saw around them, but those kids had amazing aspirations for themselves. So it starts at that young age, that optimism. I can be this. And sometimes our system, it sort of beats it out of them by the time they get to teen. But when they're young, they've got this wonderful sense of optimism, aspiration. So I think not naive. I wouldn't say it's naive at all.
And I guess, I'm not young, but when I was, and I was trying to, because I'm intrigued by your question, and we thought about that. Laurence said, and Jacqueline reinforced that that level of confidence in young people was quite flagrant, wasn't it? It was there in the study. And I was thinking, well, if you asked me that when I was young, I was like, well, if you gave me the option of, working flexibly, using technology, doing something I really wanted to do, as opposed to being locked into a career job, receiving the same salary, for 5 years, doing the same kind of work without that opportunity to be creative or to communicate in a certain way or collaborate with others, some of those soft skills. I know which option I would have kind of voted for, as it were, at that time. So I don't know whether there's a certain element of that, but yeah, I was trying to think about that as well. There's another question from the gentleman behind here.
Hi there. Hello. Yeah. Mark Dorr, not a comfortable place coming from the UK reading this report today. And I represent apprenticeship providers, and they complain a lot about the school's bias, in a sense, towards academic and universities. And so is some of this a sort of cultural, social issue, or is it just poor policy that's letting down these young people, particularly from, we've got a couple of people from the UK here. Which one do you think it is?
Well, I'm not from the UK, so I think Neil or Nick would be in a good space to answer that. But the numbers do reinforce what you're saying. The UK and other countries, such as France, such as Australia, so I can put myself, in that less comfortable place, didn't bode well in this. Young people were saying that, they didn't get the support that they needed. They don't feel confident that their skills and knowledge will be in demand. So, our UK friends, please.
I'll pick up on that. One of those also strong findings here was actually about careers advice and how poor generally it is. And I think that's not just been the case in the UK, but in a lot of countries, the careers advice. It's something we really haven't taken seriously enough. I think in the UK we are beginning to change that. It is making a change, but it has a long way to go. But again, internationally, this idea of this disconnect between the world of work, this mismatch. The survey that OECD are doing, they're looking at 500,000 young people, and they've asked them their career aspirations, and then they're comparing that with the labour market on each country, being published on the 3rd of December. And that is likely to show this massive disconnect around the world between, where the jobs are and what young people are aspiring to. So that mismatch is really key, and part of that is investing in high quality, independent, impartial careers advice. We've done a bit in the UK, but we do have a long way to go.
I'll just jump in there because Nick's mentioned the OECD, he's mentioned PISA data, and it comes out later this year. But just kind of to forum that essentially, young people actually have indicated through the PISA data that, what was it? Something like they indicated that they wanted to do 10 different types of job. So in terms of career description, criteria and description, I guess, that they're not interested in 100 different types of job. It's really kind of limited. It's quite interesting phenomenon, Neil.
I think it is an uncomfortable read for the UK, but I don't think it's a surprise. It's probably not a surprise to yourself or to us in terms of people that work in this environment in the UK, and I'm sure it wouldn't be a surprise to policymakers either. So I guess the benefit of this sort of study is looking from an international perspective and, you know, looking at what should we be learning in the UK. I don't think we do enough of this international benchmarking and really looking at what the UK can learn from others, particularly in policy making. And there are clearly great examples of what other countries are doing better than the UK. So that's a huge service I think this work and the next stages of this work can do for the UK. I agree with Nick that, you know, there's so much more we could be doing on better careers advice. There is lots of initiatives that we're all aware of in the UK, but they're not being scaled up in the right sort of way to really showcase and address the question you're raising around the imbalance or the bias in the education system towards the academic and not the vocational and technical. Because we know that, you know, as we've just been talking about earlier, taking young people from this competition and WorldSkills into schools, you know, we know from our own programs, 75% of young people who've met one of our skills champions are hugely impressed, and it helps really reframe their own thinking. And not just that, but it helps teachers reframe their thinking as well. And teachers who may not have the experience of the world of work and the options that are open to them, who are quite instructive in shaping young people's outlook, and parents as well. So, you know, all of this, you know, comes together as we know there are lots of initiatives going on in the UK, but joining it up and taking a much more at-scale approach has to be part of the solution to us doing better in these sorts of surveys.
And I spoke earlier about solutions, and I'd like to talk less about the findings and the problems and turn now to really solutions, and particularly Gary and Jacqueline for your opinion and perspective regarding the workplace. So we spoke kind of about the classroom, we've spoken a little about policy failures, if you like. What about the workplace? What about where the stuff happens, you know, the place where you're really getting those soft skills, learning what you need, applying that and so on? What are the big things that you'd change about the workplace in order to help, you know, you as young workers to do better, to have more opportunities, to feel that you're ready and confident?
So I'm quite lucky where I work, but when I first moved to the UAE, I didn't have the confidence to go out, and because I train the installers on site on different projects, like many big projects, how to install internal drylining systems. But when I first moved there, the only drywall experience I had was the training for the WorldSkills competition. So I went over there learning about fire rating, acoustic rating, maximum heights of walls and stuff like that. But I didn't have this knowledge when I got the job, but I had the practical skills. So I was quite fortunate that the company spent the time and effort in training me up and making sure I was confident going out into the market. And even in the UAE, the language barrier changes so much because there's over 71 nationalities living there. So every day I could be working with someone different that doesn't understand English. So yeah, for me I was quite fortunate. I was trained up, I was given the tools to go out on and do my job properly and most efficiently.
Yeah, I'm kind of self-employed to create my own perfect workplace. But yeah, I think it's really important. It's a both-sided thing. As someone who's looking for a job and then enters a job, you have to be open to learn new things and develop your skills, learn new skills. But then it's also the employer side who has to give you the time and invest money, maybe. So it's a both-sided thing. Both sides have to be ready to invest.
And I guess this is an open question. Audience too, feel free to come in. But I mean, we talk about technology as an opportunity. To what extent can technology be used as we, you know, go through our careers, those trajectories in terms of upskilling, reskilling, getting the right learning and knowledge to do our jobs well? To what extent can we use technology, would you say?
I think technology in this sense gives us a great opportunity because we can just have resources that can be used multiple times and not just once.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, obviously sharing platforms and so on, and sharing best practice and the rest. I think just the rise of the YouTube do-it-yourself videos can't be understated. I'm not at all advocating for a certain brand or anything like that, but I mean honestly, yeah, in the last 5 years we've just seen the use of those increasing so much, and yeah, it's really quite impressive. Okay, I mean,
Sorry, can I just comment
absolutely.
on technology?
Yeah.
No, yep. On the technology, I mean, the UK government decided to shove everything online, thought that would solve everything, and disinvested in people face-to-face, one-to-one, steering young people, and it was a disaster. So anyone that thinks, oh yeah, we'll just shove it all online, put some YouTube videos on, it just doesn't work. They're great to support, but that one-to-one, that meeting with the champions, all of that, that's what it really drives the young people.
Yeah, that face-to-face interaction. Thank you very much. And there was another question from the audience, a couple of other questions.
Hello, yes. My name's Kelly Betts. I'm from Canada, and love this conversation. I'm an educator from Canada, and so I'm quite interested in some best practices of training teachers and providing information to parents, because we know those are the two biggest influencers in a child's life, and what can be done or what is being done that could help to train or to inform parents and teachers who are the more influential people in their lives, and that can help to bridge between school and work and make things more open for consideration of a variety of different career paths.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got about 10 minutes to go, and I'd really like to focus on exactly that point that you're talking about, career trajectories, this interface between the workplace and the classroom, if you like. I'm thinking about employers, I'm thinking about business in particular. Historically has really been kind of an observer, providing advice regarding the education system. Business looking on, and kind of often is the case that they're criticising the education system, saying, you're not providing me with, workers that fulfil my needs. How do we get kind of businesses, employers, into the education system as participants rather than critics?
Whereabouts in Canada are you from?
British Columbia.
Okay, well, I was in Canada earlier in the year, actually speaking at their careers conference, and was in a school in Vancouver who were doing exactly that. And they were getting people from the world of work into a primary school and working with your careers professionals and really empowering the teachers. If I can maybe just pick up on that theme, about 6 years ago in the UK, a group of business leaders, educationalists and government sat together, CBI, I think Neil, you were involved at the CBI at the time, to really think about how you connect the worlds together. And it's got to be an owned solution. It's got to be owned by the teaching profession, government, but also by the business community. And we had lots of stakeholder meetings. And from that, we developed the Inspiring the Future system, which is an online matchmaking system, which gets people to volunteer an hour a year to go into schools to talk to young people from primary and secondary. Martin's point about face-to-face is spot on. Face-to-face is really important, but actually getting people to volunteer. I mean, in the UK now we've got about 50,000 volunteers, and we've been talking to your government about trying to replicate and improve, make it better. A really simple online system where people are asked to volunteer an hour a year, and then teachers go on and look at a database. It's a bit like online shopping, so I want someone, who's an expert in hairdressing or plastering or architecture or finance or building, and they go on this massive database, they see these volunteers, and they think, right, I'll send them a message and I'll invite them into my school because, today we're doing, World Book Day, or we're doing healthy eating, or we're doing Science Day, or we're doing International Women's Day. all right? And I think, well, there's an amazing woman who's a female electrician. Let's get her in and talking about her job. And because it's sort of driven by the teachers and it integrates the curriculum, it works. So you have the business community supporting by encouraging people to volunteer, and you get the teaching profession to then do the invitations. And that dialogue works really well because it's not being imposed on teachers. What you're doing is working with teachers, supporting teachers, and saying, here's a brilliant free resource. You know, teachers every day, I used to be a teacher, they want to inspire kids. And it's an easy way of inspiring, raising aspirations, and ultimately leading to improvements in academic attainment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add, because there's something happening during World Skills that visitors coming can't see because it happens before the competition. It's a program called One School, One Country. So once we know that we're going to go, for instance, this case, Russia, the local host is going to work in finding schools in the area where the competition is going to be held. And the day before the competition starts, each team will be assigned a school and will go and visit them. But the contact is already made 6 months before between the teams. So they have an opportunity to communicate, the school has an opportunity to create a program around it. And so I just wish people could actually go and see it, because that's when you really see the impact it has to bring those young people into the classroom. Because frankly, having done it on a couple of occasions, you go there I went with the French team. You know, the kids were outside with balloons, they were waiting for us. They took the competitors through the classroom. Every classroom being decorated with about France. They'd learned about the customs, they'd learned about the cooking, everything. There were questions, there were sessions, they played football with the kids, had a picnic for lunch with them. But it was this whole thing that watching those elementary school kids looking at the competitors like, wow, like, you know, I just met the football star, the movie star. It was the same impact. And it was that vision of changing the view that young children have and giving them other role models. And I think that's really important if you want to do that, is to bring in a role model they haven't heard of. Because if you look at the media today as well, if you look at movies or anything, what's glamorized are not the skills that we need. Everybody knows about lawyers and doctors, you see them all in movies. You're not going to see the plasterer very often in a movie. So it's all about changing that perspective and using new role models. Our competitors are great for that, but I'm sure that in Canada you can also find local craftspeople who can come in, demonstrate, do things. I had my husband at some point in the school in the UK going in. He's a scientist, so he's working for a food company. They went in and spent the morning talking to kids about food because they need youngsters to go in for food careers. But who in that school had ever heard about the possibility of working in the food sector? No one. So it's all about that aspect of, at that age, they want to know, they want to learn, they're eager. So bring the right role models into the classroom.
And I suppose where you started out is, where can we get business involved? And the big shift, I think, that took place for the CBI in the UK as one of the main business organisations was, instead of criticising, supporting, and actually understanding that teachers are under a huge amount of pressure to deliver lots of things, not just academic and pastoral support. And therefore, if you want a different outcome from the system, you have to engage in the system. You have to engage with head teachers. You have to engage with teachers to support them and encourage them, because you can't expect, or you shouldn't expect, that they will have the answers that are going to meet business needs. And that was a mindset shift in the business community to do that, Nick, as you've described. And it's also something, from a world skills perspective in the UK, we try to do as well, in terms of providing teachers with toolkits, tool planning, lesson planning toolkits, looking at vocational career options. As part of our national finals in the UK, we have teacher and parent hubs where you can come and talk about how, what support you need, talk to employers about what they need, meet some of our alumni. There's a lot of support, I think, that's around online, but also face-to-face, because it is about everybody understanding that if we want a different outcome from the education system, we have to engage, and businesses need to engage with it in a different way, not just standing on the sidelines criticising the outcome.
Absolutely. And in this world, of course, all comes back to money. So, you know, you guys have described some systems here. I'm sure you've all seen examples of this type at the local level, of where, you know, employers and schools are kind of interfacing and so on. But who finances that? Where are the resources coming from? Can you guys provide some insight into that? It could provide ideas for others as they search for financing for this type of endeavour in their local context. Yeah.
I mean, for our system, we use technology to connect at scale. So you use technology, whether it's Uber, WhatsApp, the Russian version of WhatsApp, which I can't remember the name. Sorry? Program. You know, we use it all the time to connect. So, you know, why don't we use technology to connect the world of education with the world at scale? And that's what a number of other governments are doing. They're replicating the technology, they're improving it, and then they're using the networks. So, you know, Neil's absolutely right. You know, the change, you know, probably about 6 or 7 years ago in the CBI, who didn't really engage with the business community, with the education community. They didn't engage with the business, they represent British business, sorry. They didn't engage with the education community. The two leaders didn't know each other. And, you know, and successive presidents of the CBI, you know, they have all been completely committed to going into schools, to supporting the work, and not just in London, but in some of our more challenged, you know, taking a 4-hour journey across the UK to go into some of the most deprived schools and to go and say, if I've got time to do this as the leader of our business organisation or our minister or our prime minister, so have you. So actually, if you use technology and then you use the networks, the business network, the government networks, the education networks, you can do things at scale actually very, very cheaply. Now, careers advice, face-to-face, it costs money, and I think that's a really worthwhile investment, because if you look at, you know, the jobs of the future, the labour market, you know, we're all dependent on this, we're all struggling with this mismatch. I don't know a country that's got an ideal of what kids want to do and that they want to do the jobs that you in a country have. So if you look at it from the economic point of view, actually providing that face-to-face is probably one of the best investments you're going to make economically. But again, you can use technology, as we've done, to do things at scale and to share and collaborate. You know, and that's the great thing about this conference is people are learning from each other. We learn so much from being here. Hopefully you learn a little bit from being here as well. But, you know, it's that collaboration, and our interest is how do we support our young people to give them the best chance in life? And that, you know, by collaborating, we can get a lot further than by competing.
Another great way or idea just jumped into my mind would be all our home countries, we all have national and regional competitions, and we all have many skills in them. But one of the skills is web design. So I know in some of the skills on the final day of the competition, they come together as a team and they do team events. So why not in your local country, you could use the web design, use the resources you have, make it part of the competition, design the app, and then release it, just as an idea.
Fantastic idea. Yeah, very good. Thanks, Gary. Make note of that, everyone. I've made a note of it. So, yeah. Who's going to pay for that, Gary, by the way? It all comes back to that. Unless, Neil, you had something to jump in with, or Jacqueline, on that point about resourcing?
Yeah, I mean, all of these come down to public-private partnerships, really. They've got to work, because everybody's got to engage and put a stake in, and that comes down to investment. And of course, all of these challenges in all of our countries need significant investment. But I think relying on your public investment, public sector investment, is hugely important to kickstart a lot of these activities and get the private sector to engage as well. I mean, that's the model we work on in the UK as World Skills, and there's always more you can do. So obviously everybody always wants more investment and more funding. But I do think that, as Nick said, looking at careers advice and more funding going into careers advice, there is a business self-interest in this that needs to be more clearly and probably strongly articulated. This isn't just a public sector agenda or a government agenda. There is a huge amount of self-interest in businesses engaging with this because it's their future workforce they're trying to shape, and it will make them and the countries they're operating in more competitive if they do so.
Yeah, some OECD research estimates the amount of percentage of GDP required to address the skills mismatches up to 10% of GDP. So we're talking about a significant investment that's needed to transition us from this skills crisis, if you like, to a situation where, you know, that supply and demand is kind of being better aligned. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because this is the WorldSkills setting as well. The country you're coming from probably has a WorldSkills organization. If you haven't already linked up with them, I would encourage you to do that, simply because I always find that the competitions are underused. Our competitions aren't just a competition, they're an opportunity to bring stakeholders together. They're an opportunity, as Neil was saying, and he's doing very well in the UK, it's an opportunity to gather and reach out to the people that wouldn't normally. I know from personal experience as well, from a national organisation, you can bring people together around the concept of working around setting of competitions. The schools would be happy to compete to each other and show that they're bringing forward the best young people. You know, the stakeholders behind the schools would be happy to come along and say, hang on, I'm doing better than he does. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring people into a room that would not normally connect outside of that environment. The team, the national team, is also something you can rally people around, and they'll forget about the differences when they step out of the room. Use the competitions as well to foster these type of projects. Gary gave a brilliant example, you know, using the competition in web design to design something that you can use for something else. So think creatively, as we were told this morning, you know, try and fail, as we were told in the plenary session, but do make use of the competitions and don't just look at them as a competition. Look beyond that at the opportunities it brings for you to develop new systems, to bring stakeholders together. It really is a multifaceted tool, and it goes way beyond just the competition.
Great advice. I'm learning a lot. I'm inspired personally. Any comments and questions from the floor regarding any of that? I know that you had the microphone before. Did you want to make an intervention? Yeah. Yeah, well, we've got about 5 minutes left, something like that. Yeah. So, sure.
I'm just curious, from a country of survey, there are a number of countries with big outflow of labor migration.
Yes.
So I myself, from such a country, we have 2.5 million people working abroad. Most of them are young people, very young people. I noticed when it comes to domestic labor market, we're quite confident. But national economy couldn't create jobs enough for all young people. We have to migrate abroad. And at that time, where confidence decreased very sharply. Maybe Gary knows it, because we have fear of requirements of foreign labor employees, foreign labor market, foreign labor standards. This is a big problem because we have 600 million people, migrants in the world, most of them young people. So maybe my question is lays beyond the survey, but this is very sensitive issue. Do you have any win-win quick solutions for national policymakers to deal with this situation, or it's again a question of investment or education policy? Do you have any quick solutions or quick measures to tackle this situation? Thank you.
Could require some thought. Does anyone want to, Neil?
I guess the bigger challenges for policymakers is creating a labour market and an inward investment framework that is attractive for businesses to create jobs and maintain jobs that are attractive to young people in your country. I mean, if you look at a country like Ireland, who for many years lots of young people left the country, and that trend reversed when the booming economy in Ireland in the 90s really took off, and lots of people stayed because there were jobs, there were future technology companies came and invested, and you know that's a macroeconomic positioning that governments need to take in terms of how do you encourage companies to invest through tax systems as well as labour market, education and training policies, so a more holistic approach to that, and engaging young people and getting them excited about the jobs that will be available. But it's not a quick and easy solution. It takes a long time. But if you look to Ireland, I think, about what they did in terms of creating policies that really helped businesses come and invest, particularly American companies came to Ireland to do that and to set up and create jobs for the future, which is still thriving now. And I would look to Ireland as a potential case study.
Okay, great. Well, we're nearly there. We're a couple minutes from the end, and it'll be good to use this this time, unless there's any kind of burning needs to ask or... Yes? If you just introduce yourself too, I should have asked that before.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bright from Nigeria. I just want to ask this question, I think, from the African perspective, right? I think one of the major problems we have in Africa is the fact that a lot of young people would rather go for white-collar jobs because there's more sustainability when it comes to value and when it comes to how much money they make. The value that's placed on the jobs, on skilled jobs in Africa is not so much. So how much money can a bricklayer make at the end of the year? I mean, it's physical. You can actually see that. So the young people, the kids, or the next generation would not want to look up to people that they know would not, they don't see any positive impact in their lives. So how can we change that? How can we add value to these skilled professions and, increase the money that they make at the end of the year to also drive that, national change from within, from the grassroots? Thank you.
I think it is all about data. I don't know off the top of my head, but surveys that have been done in the UK that young people who go to university and then follow white collar routes as opposed to young people who are doing apprenticeships, sometimes the difference in terms of overall pay is not that great, and for some skilled careers you actually end up earning more over the lifetime. So there are data points around how you can encourage people who are motivated by earnings to be able to do that, and obviously setting up your own business is another way to potentially increase your earnings over a lifetime, maybe not at the beginning when you're doing that, and about a more balanced discussion about data and how you use data to really look into giving a balanced, informed debate, around whichever route you follow, which is more likely to be more rewarding in the sense of being more lucrative, but also more rewarding in terms of what you do want to do with your life. That sometimes can help shift perceptions about career choices that young people make.
Yeah, from a world's perspective, I think if you look at the map of the world and look at our member countries, we have a gap, and that gap is in Africa. There is a lot going on at the moment with us talking to African countries to try to bring them on board. We were very happy to have a first WorldSkills Africa competition. I know that in Africa the mindset is also shifting at the policy level around the fact that skilled workers, they need upskilling as well. There is no point in just letting a youngster out to train with bricklaying with somebody who hasn't had a minimal amount of training as well. So there's also a shift around vocational education that I really hope is going to come the African way as well, and we hope we can contribute to that, because as I was saying earlier as well, it's also a matter of perspective and of looking at things from a different point of view. It's not all about the money. I know in Africa the situation is different, but it's not all about the money. It's also about the fact that this is something you're going to do every day of your life. You need to be happy doing it as well. So there's a message around that. There's a message around giving more importance to those skills, giving them greater recognition, and making them into what they actually should be, and giving them the position they should have as big contributors to the economy. So I'm also hoping that from a WorldSkills perspective that we can push that message through Africa as well.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about our next steps for the study, just to conclude today. But I did want to ask a question actually to Jacqueline and Gary. How can we get a pair of those cool shoes?
See how quick we turned on our mics there to answer that? The two of us. Unfortunately, to get a pair of these shoes, you have to be a past competitor of the World Skills competition, but also you have to be selected to be on the Champions Trust in which we're on. So to be on the Champions Trust, you have to have competed in one of the last 3 competitions, or here today, and there's an age limit on it.
Okay, so you guys stay here. We'll all be off having lunch and enjoying ourselves. No, just to really say thank you so much to you guys who asked questions and participated in today's panel. Warm thank you as well to panelists who were outstanding. We went through a lot of solutions, a lot of stuff happening at the local level. I hope that was inspirational. In terms of this study, and a lot of you have got the highlights document that we printed off for you. It's going to be actually the full report, which is a 50-page report, will be launched at a press conference on Sunday, actually. Then there will be hard copies of that around. It'll be online as well. I know the OECD is doing social media, World Skills is doing social media, Education Employees is doing social media, so stay switched in, hashtag Kazan Skills 2019, whatever it is. We've also got a stand for the I Am the Future of Work campaign downstairs if you'd like to talk about that in terms of OECD work. Nick is going to be around, Neil, Jacqueline, Gary, Laurence are around as well. This study is really a first step, we see. It was a great collaboration between a few different organisations. We want to go further, however. We know that Nick and his group have data from very young people. We have data from PISA of 15-year-olds. We have this data from 18 to 24-year-olds. We have another study at the OECD called PIAC, which is an assessment of adult competencies. You might have heard of that. There's TALIS data to see what teachers think. So I really feel that the questions here regarding the future of work, regarding awareness, confidence, readiness, could be packaged into something to take us a lot further. So, come and talk to us later. We can exchange cards and all that kind of stuff, but it would be really good to use this as a springboard and do something really at a larger scale and scope at some point in the future. So again, thank you so much, and we hope to see you around later on.